Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 18.4 RC, or Release Candidate. Apple actually wrote it out for the first time here, and the Release Candidate is the final version given to developers and public beta testers early, and as long as there's no additional issues, it will be the final release. If there are additional issues, we'll have an RC2 and then a final release. iOS 18.4 supports all iOS 18 supported devices and has many more features other than just Apple Intelligence, so I'll split those up into the chapters below, so be sure to check that out if you want to just jump around. Now this update came in at 7.65 gigabytes on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and anytime you install from a beta to a public release or release candidate, it's going to reinstall the entire OS, so that's why it's such a large install. As far as the other devices, they were about the same size as well, and along with this, Apple released a lot of other updates. iPadOS 18.4 RC, watchOS 11.4 RC, tvOS and HomePod OS 18.4 RC, macOS 15.4 RC, and visionOS 2.4 RC, along with some older updates as well. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the build number and talk about what's new. So we'll go into settings, then we'll go up to general, then about. As you can see, the build number is 22E239, and this should be the final build number released to the public unless there's additional issues that Apple finds and they update the build before releasing it. So we may see that, we may not. We'll talk about that a little bit later. As far as new features and changes and updates, well, there is no new modem update coming from Beta 4 to the RC, and there are a lot of features in this update, whether it's Apple Intelligence or for all phones. So first, let's talk about Apple Intelligence. There's a new priority notification update. This is something Apple promised when they showed this off at WWDC. If we go to settings and then notifications, we have prioritize notifications. We can still set this up now, enable it or disable it, and it gives a unique look when maybe a priority notification comes in. We can select the different apps that use it or not use it at all. For those that have been wanting to try Apple Intelligence, it's now available in more languages and countries, and also Visual Intelligence is on the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max. You can use that by assigning it through the action button. So if you go into your settings, then go down to action button, you'll now see you have an option for Visual Intelligence. You also have the option in the control center for the same thing. So we have the option to just enable it. It will open up Visual Intelligence and you can use it from there. That works on the 15 Pro, 15 Pro Max, and all iPhone 16 devices. Visual Intelligence also can be configured on the action button now on the iPhone 16 as well. If we go into Image Playground, maybe we'll go to one I've already created, we go down to Edit, we now have the option to change this to the sketch style. So we can change it, it's something Apple promised initially, and we have the option to change anything we've created to a sketch instead of an illustration or animation. As far as features for all iPhones, well, that's it for Apple Intelligence. Control Center has some new options. If we scroll down here, you'll see we have some new ambient music modes. So if I tap on one, it will play. And then if I swipe home, you'll see it's actually playing up in the top. We can go into it and you'll see what's playing, and it just plays this based on the type of ambient music you selected. There is no separate app for it, but if we press and hold, go to add a control, you can see them here for sleep, chill, productivity, and well-being. So that's new, along with Visual Intelligence you can see here on the 16 Pro Max as well. Another thing that's new in the control center is the Wi-Fi and cellular buttons now show the actual signal strength. So you'll see I have 2 bars of cellular data, full Wi-Fi bars, and you'll see that here. 2 bars, full Wi-Fi bars. Also in the control center, focus mode now has a little arrow here next to it. So you have 2 little arrows up and down there. If we go back into settings, this time I'll use the iPhone 11. We'll go down to Siri. Under Siri, this is on all iPhones though as well. And we go to voice. We have new options for Australia. So if I drop this down, you'll see we now have 4 options for Australia. So voice 1.
The setting sun as the stars begin to shine.
The colors of the sky
Voice
fade with
2.
the setting sun as the stars begin.
Voice 3.
The colors of the sky fade with the setting sun.
Voice
The colors
4.
of the sky fade with the setting sun.
So we have some new options there for Siri's voice. Another thing we have that's new is an Apple Vision Pro app. It shows my Vision Pro, so this is my personal Vision Pro, and then shows anything that's recently been released so you can see what's available for it. If we go into my Vision Pro, you can see details about it with my prescription inserts, getting started, fit and care, essentials, and the user guide. So that's there. Maybe we'll have updates through that and everything else a little bit later. Apple has updated the privacy indicator where they've moved it into the dynamic island, and then it's animated based on what you're doing. So if we go into voice memos and tap record, you'll see it's in the dynamic island there. then it will jump outside of it. If you have multiple apps running, it will move over. So if we go and start a stopwatch and then we swipe home to the stopwatch, you'll see I'll swipe home again, it jumps to the outside, and it sort of goes through it sometimes as well. So they've just moved it around to make it easier to see. Within Messages or any place you're using the keyboard with the Emoji keyboard, there's new emoji available to comply with the latest Unicode standards. So you can see we have a fingerprint, a heart, a splat, and we also have an updated Syrian flag as well. Another thing they've updated, if you have a device with Apple Intelligence, you'll see if we go into the Emoji keyboard, we have it saying Genmoji, where it was just an icon before. If we go into the News app, then we go to Following, we have a new category for food. Food has recipes with a catalog, saved recipes, and featured recipes, and a For You section. So if you want to make something new, you could look it up here or get some suggestions as well. If we go into Photos and scroll down to where we have all of our different photos, go to our Sort options and tap on Filter, we now have the option to filter by shared with you or not in album. If we go into the App Store, there's a couple changes here as well. So if we go in and maybe let's download something, maybe Zoom Workplace, it will start to download and then we can pause it or resume it now. We also have some reviews that have been updated. So if we go maybe over to this app, you can see reviews sometimes that are AI generated. So as we go down here, you may see some that are actually generated by AI telling you a summary of what we have as far as reviews. If we go into the Home app, it now supports robot vacuums. So if you have a robot vacuum, you have the option to add it here if it's supported with HomeKit. If we go into the Passwords app and you're using two-factor authentication, maybe you have one of those set up as far as a code that's rolling and changes every so often, they've updated it with a new icon that's a circle that sort of counts down when the next code will be shown. Within Apple CarPlay, some are seeing 3 different rows. I haven't seen this on my cars with CarPlay, but let me know if you're seeing this. Safari also has some updates. So if we go into Safari, we're on Apple's website, but let's maybe go to a different website here. Within Safari, if you press and hold on an app link, it now says open in App Store. Instead of showing a big preview, I know some people are seeing this big preview. I'm not seeing it at all anymore. Now, if we go to another website and we go to search, we can now see our search history. So you'll see a few different things here, and we can also turn this off in our options. So if we go into our settings, go down to Safari, you'll see in the Safari options, it says show recent searches. You can disable this if you don't want to see that. Also, if you're on a website, so maybe Apple's website here, we can go into our details, go into additional details, and then go to connection security details and see more about this specific website, where their certificate is from, where it's issued from, and when it's valid until. Within the Shortcuts app, if we go and add a shortcut, search for actions, there's quite a few that have been updated. For Calendar, for example, where we have some app settings here. Now, Apple has removed some of the updates they had in earlier ones for Apple TV. Maybe they'll bring them back with the public release, but at this point, they've removed some, they've added some, and I'll go over all of them in the public release if there's a difference. As far as Mail, well, this has been updated on the iPad specifically now to have the new Mail app. So within Mail on the iPad, you can see we now have the option for categories. So it's the update we had before. You can disable it just like before and have the list view, or have it enabled with categories and search through them. All Mail, you have different things such as transactions, updates, and promotions. So you can sort that or just turn it off altogether if you don't like that. There's also an update under Wallet. If we go into the Wallet app, in the main screen in the upper right under the 3-dot menu, it now says pre-authorized payments. So that's a new option to see any pre-authorized payments, and you'll see that I have one here. I need to cancel it, and it lets me know whether or not I have any. On iPhone 16 models with camera control, if we go into settings, you'll see there's some odd touch issues here. Go into camera, go to camera control. Under camera control, we now have a new option for launch camera, and it shows all of the available apps that can be assigned to the camera control button to launch them. So if an app supports it, it will be listed here, and then you can select it. It used to be under the main menu. As far as bug fixes, well, it doesn't really give us any information on their release like they typically do, so that's a little bit different. But if we go to Apple's public-facing release website with the release notes, you can see there's some features for developers, and they've resolved a few issues for Apple Intelligence. There's some known issues remaining for the Apple Vision Pro app. They also have some things. This really hasn't changed much since Beta 4, and you'll just see resolved issues for Swift UI. You have quite a few other things that have been resolved as well. So no real changes here as far as what they've mentioned. However, I did have that touch bug I mentioned earlier. So far, I haven't seen the camera bug where if we go into the camera, spin it around, it seems to be working fast now. No matter what I switch to, it's still working. Where previously I would open it up and it would just freeze or not work for about 5 seconds. Also, notifications seem to be working okay. So if I scroll down here, you'll see they're fast and fluid. And the wallpaper bug does seem to still be there. It desaturates, and some have suggested, well, it's because of the overall background icons and things. This is a known bug. Sometimes it will desaturate. In other betas, it will saturate more. The micro stutters seem to be gone at this point. However, there was that touch issue when I went to touch on settings a couple times. It just wouldn't open. So there's still some odd issues here, and I'm not using a screen protector. As far as releases, well, iOS 18.4 RC2 could come out if there's additional issues they need to fix, and we could see that later in this week. If we do see that, we'll have a new build number and hopefully some additional fixes with some notes as to what they've resolved. As far as a public release, well, Apple did say this is coming out in April. I would expect it maybe April 1st or maybe even the 31st. We don't really have a specific date, but they did say April, so I would expect it next week at this point. Then Apple will move on to iOS 18.5 Beta 1. We should see that maybe with some new features and changes. And we could also see this week WWDC25 announcements at this point as to when it's going to take place, typically in June, and I believe it will be on June 9th if they just are consistent with what they've done in the past. Then we'll see iOS 19, which is the focus at this point and what Apple's really working on. So that's expected to be a huge change at this point. As far as other releases, well, Apple did update AirPods today, AirPods Max specifically with lossless audio on the AirPods Max with USB-C. Unfortunately, it's not available on the ones without USB-C on Lightning. So it doesn't work on my old one, even though they're basically the same thing. So hopefully they bring this, but that means we will see an AirPods update as well. They also released a cable for it, USB-C to 3.5mm headphone jack. As far as performance, it seems to be pretty good overall. I did show you that it had that touch issue, but I haven't seen any micro stutters. Scrolling with ProMotion is fast, even on older devices, even though they don't have ProMotion. Opening things such as music, going into the camera, so let's do that. We'll go into the camera. Nice and fast there. No real issues so far. Now, it could slow down after a couple days like we've seen in the past, but so far it seems pretty good. As far as overall battery life, well, it does take a few days to measure that. I'll be using it full time, and we'll talk about it in the weekend follow-up video. And you'll see it says update finishing in the background, but battery health, I'm at 100% with 153 cycles. And yesterday, my battery was 1 hour and 57 minutes of screen active time, 6 hours and 24 minutes of screen idle time, and I used over 50% of my battery. Today, so far, 2 hours and 24 minutes of screen active time, and I'm down to 73%. Hopefully it improves since it's going to be a final release, but again, we'll talk about that in the weekend follow-up to see if it actually improves. As far as storage, let's take a look and see if we have any additional storage being used by Apple Intelligence. So we'll go to General and then iPhone Storage. Give it a second to load. Scroll to the bottom. And last time it was using 7.1 gigabytes for Apple Intelligence, and it's still using that for a total of 19.46 gigabytes. Apple overwrites the previous version, so it's not taking up additional space. It's 19.46 total, and system data is cache data, so that will fluctuate as needed. As far as if you should install iOS 18.4 RC, well, if you're on Beta 4, absolutely. If you're on iOS 18.3.2 and want to try it out, it should be the public release, but there could be additional bugs, so just be cautious of that. It did fail for me the first time it installed on the iPad. It seems to be working okay now. I did run benchmarks as well. However, typical benchmarks, the first time you run them, are a little bit low, but it scored okay. 3,504 for single core, 8,524 for multi-core. Compared to what we had before, I had to run it 4 times to get good results this past weekend on Beta 4. So given that I just ran it after installing it, I think it's doing pretty good overall. So that's everything for iOS 18.4 RC or release candidate. Let me know if you found any additional features that weren't there before, or if they've fixed any issues you were having. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.